beard. It's weird. It just grows. Keeps growing. Okay. So hello out there. This is me recording videos in front of the design class second semester. We're having Illustrator exercises. It's gonna be so fun. This is exercise number 1. We're doing S curves. And okay, so inside of layers, I'm inside of layers right now. That's a panel. You'll notice that I already made 2 layers. One called sketch. It says in English, skitse, no, Danish, skitse, and one called rentegning, that means trace in English. I don't know why I didn't rename those, but it doesn't matter. So we'll be drawing on the layer called rentegning, trace, and we've locked the sketch so we don't accidentally move it. That's just so annoying when we're trying to trace stuff that we move the sketch below it. So it's locked and we're drawing on the layer called trace. So actually what I did was I did nothing. I just showed you stuff. Okay, so we'll select the pen tool. This is a pen tool exercise we'll be doing here. And with this pen tool selected, I will choose for there to be no fill. We're just gonna trace around the edges of this object. So that's what's gonna happen. Oh yeah, one thing before we start, because now I can see you're all focused and stuff. One thing I'll just need to say as well is inside of this folder where all of these files are located, there's also one called resources, and that's all the finished versions. So I've completed all of these exercises and saved a copy, which is the finished version, right? So then you can see, oh, what is it actually we're intending to get to? What's the end point of this? So every time before we start one exercise, it's okay that you just go in and check what's the end result supposed to look like. So that's just extra files where you can see how it's supposed to look in the end. Okay, let's go back to this. And let's start coloring. Okay, so instead of coloring in black with a black stroke color, I'll do it in red. So I'm simply just gonna go to my swatches, select an RGB red or smyk red or whatever, some kind of vibrant red color. Because drawing black on top of dark gray is just really not that obvious. It's easier to see when you're coloring it red on gray. So it's just a matter of making it easier for yourself to see what you're actually drawing. Okay, so I'll start in the armpit. I'm assuming this is a person's armpit. So I'll start in the armpit right there. I'm just gonna click once. You see, that's what I call the armpit. Let's assume that's an arm. So I click once. And then I just click and drag up here. And already now I'm starting to get annoyed because you see what's happening. If you're looking at my screen, you'll notice that my edge of the artboard is, my handle is magnetically attaching itself to that artboard edge. And that's just pretty annoying because then I do not have full control over my curve. This happens because I have snap to point switched on and because I have smart guide switched on. So what's going to happen now is, before I draw any further, I'll just go to view and switch off smart guides. View smart guides, switch them off. That's Command U on a Mac. On PC, it's Control U. So switch those off. And likewise, if snap to point is switched on, you should switch that off as well. The only one I have switched on is snap to glyph. That's a new thing. So okay, you have one called snap to glyph. That means it will snap to symbols, characters. I'm gonna switch that off as well. Okay, so I hadn't noticed that with the new update to Illustrator. Okay, so I drew this incorrectly, so I'm just gonna delete the object. Start from the armpit again, bam, and then simply try to make a curve that goes all the way up here. I expect that I don't need to tell you how to make one curve in Illustrator, because you should have learned that long ago. So, but I don't know if you noticed. Okay, I would actually zoom in here just to show you where S curves appear. So actually, if you look here, yeah, for you people at home, you won't be able to see this because I'm drawing it on the blackboard. If my whiteboard marker was in my... Where is my... Does anyone have a whiteboard marker with them? Michael took it. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, black. Okay, so I don't know. I know this is very pixelated, but if I don't know if you can see that this actually has a shape that goes like that, like a scorpion tail or something like that. This is an S curve. We define this as an S curve. So you would easily be able to see it if I did like that, right? So if I do like this, it's still an S curve. If I do like this, it's still an S curve. Right? If I do it like this, it's still an S curve. so that's what we call S curves. When we see this, and they're located everywhere, they'll be located everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but you'll often see them. And immediately when you see an S curve, what you'll be wanting to do is you'll want to draw them using only 2 anchor points instead of 3, because the majority of you have a tendency to draw it with 3 anchor points instead of 2. So how do we do that? In order to do this, in order to draw an S curve, I'm just gonna, I could actually, from now, because I wasn't supposed to click and end my anchor point. So right now it's fixed where it's located, right? So what I could do is I could click undo and start all over. But I'm just gonna show you that you can actually just change the direction of this curve right here, this handle right here, by simply holding down Alt, the Alt key, and then clicking and dragging on the anchor point like that. Then you can choose a new direction for your handle without changing the handle which was controlling the previous curve. So that way you can have 2 handles going in 2 different directions. It's nothing new for you. It's just a matter of remembering the Alt key. And when I say Alt, I mean options, right? So Alt options, it's the same deal. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try figuring out where is the center of where the curve changes direction. So I would say this is around here where it changes direction. It's often around the center, but not always. Depends on how the S curve is shaped. But often it would be somewhat almost in the middle of the formation. So what I'm gonna do is I find the center and then I draw it towards then I draw my handle in the direction of the curve that's gonna be drawn, and that curve will go left. You see that? You can see it on the... Okay, so I'm just gonna untap my mouse button. You see this curve goes inwards to the left, right, and then it goes out to the right afterwards. Okay, so the next thing I'll do, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make a lot of S curves just so we get a hang of it. So the next thing I'll do is I'll go all the way down to the bottom actually of this S formation. And I think I actually have to just hit my space bar and scroll down. Otherwise I'll show you what happens. This will happen if I didn't do that, right? So I need to sometimes zoom out or just scroll down and so on. But okay, but what I did was actually I hold down Alt to place the handle, and then next off, when I've placed it, I'm gonna click down at the end of the formation, click and drag. When I say click, I mean hold down your button, right? So don't release it until you're certain where the handle is supposed to be located. And you can see this handle needs to be located on, the right side. It doesn't go inwards, then the curve would not be an S-curve. It needs to go outwards compared to the other one. So if one of them went inwards, the other would go outwards. Or if one went to the left, the other would go to the right. Okay, so right now it seems like this S-curve is actually almost created correctly. I didn't get it entirely correct. If by some chance my stroke is too strong, I could always, go to my stroke settings, and just often when I'm retracing, I actually just use a 0.25 point stroke, so it's easier to see what I'm actually tracing. Okay, so most of you actually didn't get this totally right, and that's totally okay. But you can always go back with Alt held down, and if for some reason you switch to another tool than pen tool, by all means go back to pen tool. Otherwise, all the different modifier keys that I'm telling you to use won't work. So always the pen tool. Okay, so Alt, hold down Alt, and then you can actually click and drag these different handles just to get perfectly the shape that you want. Oh yeah, I forgot that. Okay, so when some of you are drawing, you will see what is known as a rubber band, meaning that you'll see like a stroke following your cursor. So when you're using pen tool, you'll see that I'll show what you're seeing. So you see this all the time, right? And this, I've switched mine off because I hate it. Because that's actually just getting in the way of it. I don't want it to look like this, right? So why should I have to see it like that? So I always switch this off. You don't have to if you're like addicted to having a rubber band attached to your pen tool. Then by all means use it, but I always switch mine off. That's an Illustrator preferences, selection and anchor display, and I switch it off for both pen tool and curvature tool. And this way I don't have to, when I'm drawing with my pen tool, I don't have to see a nurse that's assisting me because I can't figure out what I'm doing in Illustrator. Sorry. That seemed a bit like you should do it my way, yeah. So okay, I'm just gonna do these steps that I just did in a second instead, just to show you that it doesn't take 5 minutes, because it takes 5 minutes to explain for me, but it actually just takes a few seconds to do. So if I started out again from the armpit, and actually when I started from the armpit, I could actually click and drag, so the curve was already made, instead of just clicking on and then drawing. I could just click and drag to already make the curve from the start. Whoops. I need to zoom more out. So, but let's not do that. I'm just saying you could actually do that also. Whoops. And again, I could hold down Alt to just change the curve right here, and then again down here, and hold down Alt to just change the handles if you need to be more precise. And so you see, it takes no time, absolutely no time to do this. And there is another S-curve over here, so let's just keep drawing until we make it all the way to the other side. over here where you can see that there's a long horizontal line. So I'll just make it all the way up here. It doesn't matter if it's ugly or beautiful. I'm just gonna make this very ugly. Perhaps too ugly, but it works. Okay, so I just undid one of mine, but just try to make it all the way down here, or at least up till here. Some of you have already completed the figure. I know some of you are like, let's just get on with it. Get on with it, damn it. But the reason why I clicked undo once, or do you need like okay, I'll give you like 30 seconds. That also makes a cool break on the video for those people watching at home. Okay, some of you haven't done this yet and haven't completed this yet, and you know then it's because you're being a perfectionist. Stop doing that, god damn it! Oh, sorry, stop being a perfectionist. We don't have to make this logo look nice. Which, you know, right now it's just a matter of learning the technique, so it doesn't have to be nice. Okay, so I think we're there now. If anything goes wrong, you can always watch this video again, or you can always try this again in the break, because we'll have a break between each exercise. Okay, so the reason why I clicked undo while I was up here and didn't go all the way down to the bottom of this object is also to show you something else, because while you're drawing something, and I probably had to zoom out, I'll just accept this even though it isn't the best curve. That curve would be better if it had handles from the top as well. But okay, before I unleash my button, before I release my button, I can actually, while I'm making this curve, hold down Alt to elect another direction for my handle, even though I'm actually still making the other handle. So when I hold down Alt while I'm making this direction of handles, when I'm choosing this, I can hold down Alt, and then it will fix the first curve so it's stuck into place, and then I can adjust the next curve, you know, the next handle into some direction. So that's when you get a hang of doing that, actually, you'll increase your speed a lot inside of Illustrator. So I'll just show that again. When you're clicking to place a curve and dragging that curve, you can always, when you're happy with how the curve you see is located, you can hold down Alt to adjust the next curve, the handle for the next curve. And this in the end, this will save a lot of time when you get a hang of working like that. Because then you have already fixed the direction for this X curve that's coming up. And then it's just a matter of placing a point over here on the right, and perhaps readjusting if the handles are not entirely as you want them by holding down Alt just to readjust these handles. Yes. Okay, so I think that's all we need to know about how to make the exterior shape, because we're also gonna make the interior shape. So let's just draw this this exterior shape, and I think you'll get, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes for that. We'll see how people are coming along, and oh my god, don't be perfectionist. Promise me. Don't zoom in like this to make each and every scratch a curve in the object. Don't be doing like this. No, make long curves, right? So you only have to make a few anchor points. So a way to make sure that you do that is by zooming out a lot. So you're thinking in the entire shape instead of thinking in details of the shape. Yes, and let's do that. So you have like a few minutes to do so. Like I said, not precision, instead focus on speed. Okay, now you've had enough time. So if you haven't completed, tough luck. Okay, so I don't know if you heard me, but I switched the stroke to being a fill. And the reason why I'm doing that is so I can see if there's some parts that's not been connected yet. So by doing this, I can see is there any holes or anything similar to that. So it was actually just to check it if it's a full shape, if everything is connected. Okay, so I'm gonna switch back the stroke to stroke, and if you need, it's down here in the tools. You can just switch it by clicking these two arrows between fill and stroke. And there's actually a shortcut for that. You can also do it by just clicking. Well, if I just do it correctly, you can do it by just hitting Shift X. Bam, 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 bam. Then you can make a light show on your screen. Yay. Okay, not so fun. Okay, so the next thing is just to draw this part inside of the object. And that's S curves as well, but just make it quick. So I don't really care that it has an S shape. This is just, now we're gonna make a shape that will punch through the other shape. So I'm not worrying about the S shapes anymore. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, so what just happened? See, when I connect the last, you're probably wondering, why is he like all suddenly very happy and so on? It's because I needed this to be part of the exercise, that suddenly my corner goes all crazy. And a corner will go crazy. Let's just define it like that. A corner will go crazy if you try to connect an endpoint with a starting point and not have any modifier keys held down while you're trying to drag a curve, right? And this happens because when I started drawing this, I'll just click outside of the object and draw a new shape. I clicked and dragged a shape because I knew this was going to be an S curve. So I actually made the handle for the start of the S curve. This means that you see that I've actually already defined not just one handle for the S curve, but also the other handle at the end of the anchor, right? So that's what's going to mess up when I try to connect these 2 points, that it will try, changing both of those handles. Okay, so how do I prevent this from happening? I actually just, when I click and drag here, in order to connect these 2 points, I just hold down Alt. So it's the Alt key, click and drag, and then it will only change this handle, which is the endpoint handle, and not the starting point handle. Perfect. I hope you're having fun out there. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, just you have, I don't know, 20 seconds max, then I can take a sip of my coffee. Oh, damn, that's hot. Okay, I think we're ready. If not, you can use some of your break on it. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is I'll switch my stroke into being fill, like that, and I'll just give it another color. And likewise, I'll switch the stroke of my exterior outline to being fill. That way we have two fill shapes, and I'll use the one inside to punch through the one outside. And you can do this in two different ways. You can probably do it in 17 different ways, but the two most obvious ways to do it is by using your Pathfinder, which is a panel located in Window. So I have it up here. But you could also use the Shape Builder tool to disconnect the two. So the Shape Builder tool does exactly the same as Pathfinder minus front and unite these two. It does exactly the same as those, and you can actually get it to also intersect and to exclude. So those four modes up here is actually the same modes that will be used when using Shape Builder tool. Shape Builder tool is very intuitive. It's just a matter of when you have both of them selected, you need to select both parts. Then you just click when I say select, I use the black arrow. Yeah, that's the selection tool. I select both parts, and I simply just use the Shape Builder tool. And if I hold down Alt, that becomes a minus, and then I can simply just click on my mouse, bam, and then there's a hole in the object. And it will be exactly the same that happens if you use the Pathfinder function called minus front. So I'll just show that as well. Bam! Then we punch a hole through the object so there's transparency. That's how to do it. Now I'll just show you a quick way otherwise how to do it, because at one point I was doing this exercise and a student said to me, why don't you just draw one line and then duplicate it 3 times, and just that way making it seem like it's a very symmetrical object. And I was like, no problem. So from that time on, I just made that an exercise as well. So when you're done, okay, so I just moved mine. You could also just duplicate your artboard if you wanted. So if you're like so happy with your result that you wanted to have that on an artboard for itself, well, then you could go to your artboards and simply choose for it to duplicate the artboard you already made. Okay, it would never give complications if you hadn't put in a picture that was this huge. But okay, so what I wanted to show you is I'm just gonna lock this, and you don't have to do this yourself. I'm just gonna show you how that you could fast create this object. And I don't know if you noticed, but this actually has a similar shape of an S-curve. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just simply gonna click and drag from this point right here, and to make a handle, and then do the same up here. And then I'm just gonna readjust using my Alt key, readjust the handle position, and thus get that perfect S-shape curve. I'll add some size to my stroke, like that, and perhaps I'll choose in my stroke panel for it to become rounded at the end. You can choose how the cap will look inside of the stroke panel. If for some reason some of you only have 3 panels in your panel section, it's most likely because you're using the workspace called Essentials. I always use Essentials Classic. That way I have a lot more different panels to choose from. So if you're using the workspace called Essentials, and you would like to have more different panels to choose from, simply choose Essentials Classic. You can actually do exactly the same in Essentials. Problem is in Essentials that most of all is located in one panel called Properties. and then you have to know Illustrator to know from what panel what is from. Okay, so let's not get into that. You could switch to Essentials if you wanted it to look like mine. And I think probably most of you are used to using Essentials Classic, right? I would assume that that's what Peter also uses. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this object, and I can copy from both InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop by holding down Alt and dragging. So if I have an object selected and I use my selection tool, I can just hold down Alt to make a copy. That way it's just like copy pasting, but instead you drag paste. So likewise, I'll just take these two objects and I'll simply drag them again with my Alt key. If I can hit them, and simply just drag them, and then I'll just rotate them. And you know, when you're using the selection tool in Illustrator, when you go to the border, the boundaries, the edge of a bounding box, you can rotate. So I'll hold down the shift to rotate it exactly 90 degrees, and then I'll just place that wrap. The problem with moving objects that consist of a stroke is often that if you hit outside of the stroke, you'll have to reselect the object. You have to hit if you hit outside the path, not the stroke. So you actually always have to hit this very small path, even though it's a very broad stroke. I think it looks like the designer wanted these horizontal lines to be a bit more tilted. So I'm just gonna do that by rotating them just a bit more like that. And then it seems like it's more like it's supposed to be. So let's say that's how it's supposed to be. Problem now is if I want to make readjustments to this object, it consists of a stroke, and you know I can't adjust anchor points of a stroke except the one that made the stroke. So if I want to adjust the edge right here, that's impossible unless I expand the object. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select everything and then simply choose Object, Expand, bam. And notice what happens. Well, look at how the path inside looks right now, and look what happens when I click OK to Object, Expand, boom. The path goes outside. So instead of being inside, now the path is outside, meaning that I can actually adjust the outside of the object precisely like I want it to be. So that's what you always want to do with strokes when you need to adjust their, where you need to have 100% freedom in adjusting the object. Well, then you need to expand it. So the last thing I'll do is, of course, when I'm happy with how this looks, I could connect all of these shapes. Some of you would be like, I'm not certain this is how I want it to look, so let's just make everything move in one group. Well, then, okay, you could just say Object, Group, so it's one group, and then it would always move as if it's one logo. But if you're 100% sure this is how I want it to look, then there's no reason to have it as a group. Then you might as well just connect it. So how to do that is, of course, again, by just using your Pathfinder or using the Shape Builder tool and clicking Unite. Bam. Then it's not 4 objects on top of each other, it's one object. And that's how you draw Filterfloor logos in Illustrator. Yeah, so this was an exercise in S-curves and also in expanding strokes, so you could use them for making logos. That's exercise number 1, and it was the longest exercise. A good way to start your morning. Yeah. Hello out there. This is a file number 2, Align Hammer, that's being used in order to show you how to use align functions inside of Illustrator and how to reuse curves in order to get the same curves reflected inside of Illustrator. I've already made a finished version of the hammer right here. Not finished like the nationality, but finished like it's done. Okay, so over here we're gonna complete the exact same exercise as I did for myself over here. So we're gonna try to construct this hammer inside of Illustrator, making sure that all the lines are connected properly and aligned properly. Okay, so first of all, in layers, I've made sure that the sketch, is locked. So we're drawing on top of the trace layer, the one called Rentegning, meaning trace. So we'll be drawing on top of that. Like before, in the previous exercise, I'll just make sure that I'm drawing with a red line. So I'll just use RGB red or smyg red to draw on top of the shape, on top of the sketch. So this is not about precision. This is about making the contour of this object. So we'll just start out. Just make a really easy to draw shape of this object, and yeah, let's just do that. So, like I said, don't make it perfect, just make it. Boom, 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 boom. Do 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 do. Perfect. So you'll just have, I don't know, 20 seconds to do that as well. And then I'll be singing while you're doing it. La 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 la, yeah, yeah. There's a bar located in Aalborg. It's called Rockin'. They play heavy metal and rock. Yeah. Yeah, I am actually a teacher, I know. Are we ready? If we're not ready, it's because you're being perfectionist. Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds more and then we're ready. Okay. Okay. So the next thing we'll do is make sure that all of these different anchors are located in an aligned fashion. So you can easily see that these, for example, these two anchor points right here, they don't even look closely aligned. So they'll need to be aligned so they are located exactly in the same position horizontally. And we'll also have a lot of different other anchor points which will need to be aligned correctly. So in order to do so, for example, I could take these 2 points up here at the top of the hammer and just make sure they are aligned. And I do so by switching over to using, instead of my selection tool, I use my direct select tool. So the direct selection tool is used for aligning these different anchor points. So and this is why it's very important that the sketch behind is locked, because otherwise if I was clicking and dragging a selection, it would instead move the sketch in the background. So I'll click and drag over these 2 anchor points up here. Click and drag a selection over these 2 anchor points. And then I'll make sure that they are located exactly the same horizontally. And you can actually see these align functions up here at the top in the content menu. But we also have them over in our panels, and I always prefer to use panels. I don't know why, but for me it's just a habit that I use panels instead. But I'm just saying they're also located in the content menu. Okay, so if you can't find align over here in the panels, you can always find it in window, and you just go to align. It's located almost at the top because they're put up alphabetically. So align would be almost at the top after 3D and materials and actions. Okay, so I click align, panel on, and then if it's somehow located out here floating in the air, you can always put it over next to your other panels, so it's a part of the panel section. Okay, so what I need to do here is actually obviously choose the one called vertical align button, or vertical align top, or vertical align center. One of those two, because I'll need them. You can just look at the icon and see what it's doing. It's selecting a horizontal line that they will be connected to. Don't get confused by saying vertical line, because it's actually moving stuff vertically so they match horizontally, right? So here I'll select, so if I select the one called vertical align top, well, then the lower anchor point will be moved upwards to the top anchor point. On the other hand, if I select the one called vertical align bottom, then the top anchor point will be moved down to the lower anchor point, right? So they have the same alignment. And if I choose the one called center, it will simply figure out where is the center of both of these anchor points, where is the middle of that, and put them to be aligned in the center of both. So I don't know, I'll just choose the one vertical align top. It doesn't really matter, but then they are both aligned, so they are positioned correctly on the horizontal line. Okay. Okay, and likewise, there's two anchor points down here. I'll just have them also be located at the same point. So I'll just choose, I don't know, vertical align center, perhaps. Likewise, then there's 4 points down here. I have no idea if you made the same amount of points as me, but you should select all the points that's located horizontally right here. And then, of course, I'll choose them to be vertical align top, center, or bottom. You know, something very weird will happen if you instead choose horizontal align right. Let's just try that. Bam! Then all of them will align incorrectly. So we'll just make sure that you always know if you're hitting the wrong button, because then something really weird will happen to your object. Okay, so I'll just make them align as well on that line. And I'll do the same for the bottom part of the shaft. Just make sure that they are aligned. Also, at the edge of the hammer, the bottom of the shaft, I'll make sure that those two are aligned. And that should be instead the horizontal align, one of those I choose. So they're matching as well. Okay, so there's also one at the top, 2 points at the top of the shaft. They should be aligned horizontally. And there's 2 just below that, or just to the left of that, where the metal of the hammer head is located. And I'll just relocate those by horizontally aligning right or left or center. And so on. And I'll do the same with the hammer head, the pointy part of the head. Well, it's not pointy, it's rectangular, but and I'll make sure that those are located exactly the same, and so on and so on. So actually what I'm doing is just making sure that everything that should be next to each other is aligned properly. Everything that should be on line with each other is aligned properly. So I'm just making 100% sure that that is the case. Bam, ba-dum, bam, bam. And you would, why am I doing this? Well, if this was a logo, you know, I'm quite sure that the customer paying to get this logo would like that it has some kind of symmetrical shape, right? instead of it just being random. Unless it was a company that wanted the logo to be a bit off. But often you will, in Illustrator, since you're already making very precise line art, you might as well make sure that everything is aligned properly. Okay, so you'll quickly see when you start making the object if you forgot to align something, because when everything is aligned and one point isn't, you'll notice that one point that isn't aligned. And you'll also really notice it if you're trying to reuse the same curve on the other side of the object, because then that will not match in the anchor point spots because it isn't aligned and thus doesn't have the same height or width and so on. Okay, so now we aligned all parts of the object. So what I want to do now is I'll look at which curve do I like the most of this hammer. So there is a curve that's going to be on both sides of this hammerhead. And right now I think the curve that I prefer, that I already made, is the one located on the left side. So, so I would like to duplicate that part and reflect it over to the other side of the hammer. So first of all, I'll need to delete the other side of the hammer. So in order to do that, I'll choose my scissor tool. And I'm just going to do something. I'm going to make my scissor tools and eraser tool and knife, I'm going to make those floating. Illustrator has this fantastic capability that when you're located at a tool, you can actually hold down your mouse button on top of it, and then it will show all three of them. And out on the right, when you're showing all three of these items, these tools, there's like a small area called tear off. And there you can tear off these tools so they're floating on top of your program screen, your program window. So this is actually very helpful also when using the pen tool, that I actually tear these off, so I have all of these different pen tools if I prefer not to use modifier keys in order to switch between adding anchor points, deleting anchor points, and converting anchor point in handles and so on. So just notice that you can actually tear these items, these tools off inside of Illustrator, so they are floating. They will still be located in the tools, so don't worry, they're not like gone. Okay, I'll just close this again. So for the scissor tool, I'll simply click on the part that I want deleted and in the center of that part. So since I wanted the curve on the right to be deleted, I'll just cut in the center of this line that I want deleted, like that. That was a scissor sound. I don't know what's wrong with my scissor. Yeah, okay. I'm not good at making scissor sounds. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is I'll switch to my selection tool, direct selection tool, the white one, and perhaps just click once outside and then click in on this anchor point where I just made a cut. I didn't have to do that. I could just click delete immediately, but I'm a safety guy. I prefer to click once outside and then in again. So I clicked outside, clicked in on the anchor point as well. The one that's located where I just cut. Whoops. I accidentally. Yeah. Okay. So and then I'll click delete. Bam, like that, and that removes half of this. This path going from one point to the other. Okay, now don't hit delete once more, because then it will just delete your entire object. Instead, click once outside the object, like that, and then click on that last remaining anchor point, which is still half a curve. Then click on that, and then click delete again. Bam, like that. And then you have a hole where the other curve is supposed to be located. Okay, so the next part is, now I want to duplicate this curve right here. I want to duplicate that over there, and of course I want to have it reflected as well. so it's going in the opposite direction. In order to do that, I'll just select the upper anchor point of the curve. I could also select the bottom, but it's just going to give me more stuff to delete afterwards. So I'm going to choose the upper one of these. And and still using the white arrow, the direct selection tool. Otherwise, every time I click copy and paste, it's going to paste the entire object. And I only wanted to paste an anchor point or a few anchor points, right? So I'll select that one anchor point up there, and then I'll just click Command C as copy. And instead of clicking paste because then it will just land in the center of my screen like that. So that's not going to be the correct place. So instead I'll click paste in front. And paste in front, the shortcut for that is Command F. So of course on a PC that would be Control F. So by doing so, it places the same object, a copy of the same object on top. And this object consists of that one anchor point you made a copy of and the two anchor points that's connected to that one point. Because Illustrator, if you take a part out of an object that's a vector object, it will always need to know how the two other anchor points appear compared to the anchor point that you copy. And that's because often there will be a curve somehow connecting those two. So if you copy one anchor point, you always get three. You always get two more anchor points than you copy. The one connecting to the endpoints of the line. Okay, so so you'll notice that this is actually good because then it automatically, by copying this this anchor point right here, it automatically also copies this one. There is one though that I don't need, which is the one at the top right here. So I'm gonna go to the top up here and simply just click this one anchor point like that. So this one is only selected, and then I'm gonna click delete like that. And then I have my extra curve, the copy of the curve, as a separate object. And now I'll switch to my black arrow. Just to make sure that I'm selecting the entire object, because if I click out and in again, now I have the entire object selected. When using the white arrow, there's a chance that you'll only select one of the anchor points. So now I just want to be certain that I'm selecting the entire stuff. And I did something, and I didn't say anything, and I did something, and now people are confused. How should I move that like Andreas did? Well, one thing that's very important when you move this object is that you hold down Shift, because that way it will not move, then it will always be placed horizontally, the same place as it was originally. So if I move it now with Shift held down and using my selection tool, first of all, just select it, right? And then start moving it. God damn it, I can't hit it. Do I really need to zoom in? Oh, okay, so now it's working. So while I'm moving it now, I hold down Shift, and that way it will, if you're located close to where it was aligned horizontally, it will just stay on that line. Of course, if you move it too far down, then it will start moving in a 45-degree angle. And if you move it too far down, it will start moving in a 90-degree angle. So it's actually moving in 0, 45, 90, 135 angle degree and so on, right? So I'll just move it, not all the way over to where it's supposed to be located, but somewhere in the middle, and then release my mouse. This takes some time to explain, right? But it takes almost no time to do when you know how to do it. So the next thing I'll do is I'll just go to Object, Transform, and simply choose for it to be reflected. Bam. And you know, depending on if you use this reflect earlier, it will have the same settings as you used before. So it's very important that you just click preview to see, does this actually look right? Because if it was set to horizontal like this, it's actually gonna look like it's perhaps it might look like it's correct, but perhaps, let's see, say I do like for example, if I set angle to 180, no, not 180, let's say 0, it might look correct, but actually it doesn't look correct. I'm just saying a lot of random shit. Okay, so if I set it to 90 degrees, perhaps it looks correct, but it might also look correct when I set it to 270 degrees, right? But actually, one of those will be correct and the other won't, because one of them will be flipped and then rotated, you know, and the other will just be a correct reflection. So, but in general, if you set it to vertical and you haven't messed with these other settings, then it should be correct. That's in case that it's an object located on a horizontal line, then you should choose vertical. If it's an object located on a vertical line, then you should choose horizontal. I hope that makes sense. It was like when we were aligning different anchor points. Okay, so I'll choose okay. And so the next thing I'll do in order for these, you know, you could rely on smart guides in order for these to connect correctly, but don't. Never rely on smart guides when it comes to placing anchor points on top of each other for reflected curves. But for other anchor points, it's cool. Instead, rely on the align panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this anchor point up here, the one where there's a hole in the shape, and then I'm using the white arrow to do this, the direct selection tool, and then shift click on the curve top, the one that's disconnected from the object, so that I have these two anchor points selected. So when this is done, I'll choose for them to align horizontal align right. And you know, something very bad happened, and that always happens the first time. So I'll just click undo, and that's because it wants to align to key object. And instead you should choose for it to align to selection in the align panel. Okay, so now it knows that it's selection and that it's the point which is located the further right. Horizontal align right. Bam. And then it goes there. Right now it looks very bad, but when you do the same thing to the bottom part of the object, it will look identical to the one on the other side. So I'm going to select the bottommost point, the same 2 points as before, just the ones at the bottom, and then I'll choose exactly the same, that it aligns to selection and that it goes to the right. Bam! And then we have an identical curve of the one on the other side, which is very good. Okay, now you think that we're done, but we're not, because this object is still treated as a separate object of the entire hammer. So we need to connect this object, this that we just reflected. We need to connect that to the rest of the shape. And in order to do that, you simply just choose. Well, why should we do that? Some of you would say, why should we do that? Well, if I put color in it, if I put color in my shape, you'll notice that it will just entirely ignore that curve, because that curve is not connected. So that's why we need to connect them so they know that they are part of each other. So in order to do so, I select my white arrow, and I drag a selection where these two anchor points are located on top of each other now. So I click and drag a selection with my white arrow, direct selection tool, So now both anchor points located on top of each other are selected, and then I simply choose Object, Path, Join. And that's Command J as a shortcut. It's a really handy shortcut to always remember. Command J, Control J if you're on a PC. That way you can connect anchor points. And I'll just do the same at the bottom because we need those two to be connected as well. So I'll just drag a selection on top of those two and just make sure that you don't select more than those two, because if you select 3 anchor points, it will say I'm not able to connect 3 anchor points. No, it needs to be 2 in order to connect. Okay, so I have these 2 selected, and then I just simply click Object, Path, Join, or Command J. Bam! And then it's connected, and now I can put color in, and everyone is happy. Happy, happy, yeah. Happy man, happy. Okay, we're not entirely done yet, but almost done. Now we need to color these different parts, so they actually look like a hammer. And this is very easy. This is very easy compared to the parts that we did just before this. So in order to do this, we'll simply just make copies of this object. So first of all I'm going to make I'll always, before I start cutting anything, because I'm going to cut into this object, I'll make a copy, because it's really annoying if I delete something and then accidentally remember, oh, I needed that. So I'm going to make a copy. I'm just going to select with my black arrow, the selection tool, Command, paste in front, so it's located exactly the same place. Then go to Layers and hide it. So I'll just hide this one. Boom. And the reason why I'm hiding it is because then it will not block view. So that's just toggling visibility, switching off the eye inside of the Layers panel. So now I have 2 hammers located on top of each other, which is okay. And actually, I'm gonna make this easy. So always remember to make a copy before you start cutting. Okay. I know that I just said that, but it can't be repeated enough. And you've probably also realized that in Photoshop sometimes. Oh, damn it, I edited my picture and now I regret. And you forgot to make a copy. And then you have to go a long way back. Okay, so I'm going to take my scissor tool now, because it's going to be really easy to divide this object into different parts. So with my scissor tool, I might want to zoom in just a bit so I can really see what's going on. I'll cut at where different parts meet. For example, where the metal part meets the shaft. So that's the anchor point right here. I'll click on that. And also the one down here. You don't even have to look on the screen to know where stuff, divides. Because, of course, the hammerhead would need to be gray, while the shaft needs to be, brown. Okay, I'll do the same at the top of the hammer, because there's a wooden part sticking up at the top, on the right. That's the top of the hammer. So I'll just, and I'm actually, one thing that's very bad that I did now is actually I started cutting my hammer without using smart guides. And I would not recommend that, because actually sometimes if you're not zoomed in enough, you would actually cut just next to the anchor point. So I'll just click undo, undo, undo twice, and then I'll go up and make sure that this time, even though smart guides was our enemy before when we were using pen tool and so on, now it's actually our friend. So smart guides, I'll switch that on, and that way when I'm hovering above my anchor point with my mouse and using the scissor, it will say when I'm located exactly on top of the anchor. And it will actually even have, if you cut just a bit next to the anchor, it will still cut the anchor, as long as it says anchor. So it's kind of like helping you out. uh, and then so I'll just click now, but just cut, cut. And if you cut correctly, then it should actually have a hole in the center. This hammer, if you cut the right 4 points. It seems like now it's actually telling me that were 2 points that I didn't align correctly, so I'm just gonna do that. And of course I'll need to align it to the right, otherwise this curve will change appearance. Or is it just, they are aligned, or are they? Let's just see. Okay, so to selection, bam. Okay, and of course I'll move this one down here. So there was one point, I was just too quick when aligning this earlier. So there was one point that I didn't actually align. But I've got that under control now. Okay, so the top part of the hammer, I want to cut that as well. So we can give it another color in this part of the top part of the hammer, the head. The hammer head. And I think this is enough different parts. So it will most likely look something like this when you're done cutting. You know, it will not end out looking like this, but when you're done cutting, it should look something like that. Yeah. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're going to connect stuff. And actually, the join function, you could either, select anchor points and then connect them like before. But Illustrator, if it's anchor points that's located exactly next to each other, Illustrator will actually, and if they're part of the same line, Illustrator will automatically connect them by just clicking join. So even though these 2 points, the one on the left and the one on the right, are not connected right now, it will know, because this line is the same line. It's not two disconnected line. It's one line. It will know if I say connect that it should just draw a, in this case, straight line from the starting point to the end point. So I'm just going to see if that works. So I'll just click Object, Path Join, bam, and then we'll notice that yes, it treats it as if it's connected. I don't know if you see it now. It draws a black line. If I click undo, it wouldn't draw that black line. It will. So yeah, the black line surrounding this object shows that it's connected. And the reason why it's a black line is actually something as simple as my layer being black. Reintegning layer, the trace layer, is set to black. I've set mine to black. So that's why it's showing in black. The path. Okay, so now I need to connect this shape with this shape. And these two are disconnected. They are not connected anyway. So if I click join now, Illustrator might do the right thing, or it might do something entirely not the right thing. So I'm gonna try clicking Command J and seeing if that works. And it seemed like it connected the bottom part right here. And it hasn't connected the top part yet. It always connects one part at a time when you're clicking join. So let's just click join again. And voila. So I was lucky in this case. You're not always as lucky. So sometimes you'll need to use the white arrow to just pinpoint which anchor points needs to be connected. But Illustrator sometimes, can think for you, and sometimes does it successfully. But, still, it actually did something wrong, because what about the part below that needs to be connected? So actually, it shouldn't have connected the bottom part. It should only have connected the top part. So I don't, we could either click undo, 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 but I could also just take my scissor tool and just simply click to delete that bottom part again. and then, connect this part, the bottom down here, to the lower part down here. Problem is though, when connecting these parts now, this anchor point down here is located exactly on top of the shaft anchor point. So when I click on this anchor point, I might accidentally actually get a hold of the shaft anchor point, even though I'm looking to get a hold of the metal hammer part, So that's why layers is such an essential thing to be looking at when connecting parts. So what I always do, if I know that I won't be working with the shaft, I'll simply just lock the shaft. So the parts that I won't be using, I'll just lock those, and that way I will never get a hold of that anchor point accidentally. Okay, so I've locked the shaft now. You can see I cannot click it. Well, I can click it, but nothing happens. And that way I've also actually locked the top of the shaft. So there's no way that I accidentally will click that now. Okay, so I could, with my white arrow, just click this top part of the hammer connection part and just simply scroll down to where the metal part of the hammer is again. I'm just showing it. Have this selected with the white arrow. Have this selected with the white arrow. And then click Command J or Control J as join. Bow. And again, I'll just click the one at top on the right side and the one at bottom of the right side with shift click, of course, so both are selected. And just click Command J, Control J if you're on a PC, and now they are connected. And thus I can make it gray. Of course not the stroke, goddammit. But instead, the hammerhead. And since I already made this up here, I'll just change that fill color as well. And now we made the hammerhead. So the next thing to do is just to connect the shaft. Shaft. Wow. So thus I'll actually do the opposite. I'll lock my hammer metal parts and unlock my shaft parts. And yeah, in this case, I know that I can just click Command J because the shaft is connected. So it will automatically know which line to connect, which is the open area. And yeah, I think the rest is kind of like self-explanatory. Tori, not Terry. Terry, that's a name. So now I have my hammer. And the last thing you would like to do for some people is actually add a stroke. Some people prefer there to be a stroke, so of course I'll unlock all of the objects that's part of the hammer. Unlock all of them, use my black arrow to select everything, and simply just add a stroke, let's say a 2-point stroke in the color black, blacker than the blackest black, times infinity, and there we have a hammer with a black stroke. Yeah! We did it! I feel the enthusiasm in the class right now. Are we happy? We're totally happy. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this recording. Have fun out there. Okay, so this exercise number 3 is about units and making sure that all things located in your shape has the same, width, height, and so on. For example, if I wanted to make a wave, I would want the wavy parts to have the same measurements. So in order to do that, I'm gonna do it on my artboard down here. I've just shown up here actually how I constructed these measurements. So this is actually just some indication of how it could be done that's shown down up here, but I'll do exactly the same down here on this separate artboard that I made here. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, this logo, which seems perhaps like it could be complicated to make, is actually quite easy to make. First of all, it constructs of 3 circles, one at the outer edge, one at the center, and one in the middle. Okay, 3 circles. It consists of three circles. So first of all, I'll just draw one, and in this case, I'll hold down Shift in order to make sure that it's a circle and not an ellipse. And I don't think I'll need an outer edge, a stroke. So I'll just make sure that there's no stroke, and I'll make it some color. It doesn't really matter which color it is. And let's say I have some kind of, it's going to be easier for me if I have measurements that make sense. So I'm going to make this 10 centimeters instead of it being just 8.57 something. So in the transform panel, which I both have up in the content menu, but also have over here in my panels. It can also be located in window transform. Over here, I'll just make sure that the proportions are constrained. So I'll switch my link on. My chain will be switched on, not off. And then I'll set it to simply have, right now it says 83 millimeters point something, and I'll just write 100 millimeters. Bam, like that. And I'll just move it so it's somehow located at the top of this artboard. If I wanted to be exactly in the center, I could just use my align and choose for it to align to artboard, and then set it to center with my align objects. Bam, 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 bam. Right. Okay, so next thing I'll do is I'll just make some extra circles, some that's going to be inside. So I'll make a copy. I'll simply have this object selected, and I'll choose Command C, Command F, copy, and then paste in front. And this one will be 90 millimeters, but it's, before I write 90 millimeters, I need to be sure that it's 90 millimeters and transformed from the center, because right now it says that it will transform from the upper left corner. I need to switch my reference point to being the center. That's this small area with these 9 dots, and I need to set it to center. Okay, so this is of course a copy. Make sure that you made that copy, and with this copy on top, I simply write 90 in width, and since it's constraining proportions, it will automatically, when I hit enter, change the height as well. Bam. And perhaps I would make this another color just to see that I made a circle inside, right? Last but not least, I'll copy this again, copy, paste in front, because I needed to make 3 circles, and I'll make sure that this paste in front is 80 millimeters. Bam. And simply just give it another color, like this, and then we can see, okay, I have 3 different circles. Okay, so the next thing I'll want to do is actually make this shape that's inside of the object. But in order to make this shape, I need to have some kind of measurements, so I know that it will become exactly the same from start till end. So in order to do that, I will of course use my guidelines. And to use guidelines inside of Illustrator, you will need to switch rulers on. I have my rulers switched on, but let's just say I hadn't switched them on. So now I just removed them. The way you switch on your rulers is to click Command R. Command R, like ruler, and not a ruler of the world, but a ruler that you measure stuff with. And you'll find that in View, and there's so many things in View, so let's just, here it is. You can see it right there. View, rulers, hide rulers, or show rulers, depending on if it's visible or not. Okay, so another thing is, if I start making guidelines and they do not appear after having made them, then it's because I've chosen for my guidelines to be hidden. I'll just see if my guidelines are hidden or not by simply going to my rulers out on the left or at the top. I'll take mine on the left and clicking and dragging from that ruler. Then you will see that it pulls out a guideline, and I'll drag that all the way to the edge of my object. So it says path, then I'll try to hit the object. It should try magnetically to attach to the object. If it isn't doing that, it's because you don't have smart guide switched on. But I have smart guide switched on. So even though I put my guideline there, it's not appearing. And it shouldn't appear on your computer as well. And that's because in this document, I set it to hide guideline, just to be a pestilence. So inside of View, we are able to show our guides, which in typical documents it would always be showing. It's just because I've saved this document so it doesn't show guides. So View, Guides, Show Guides. Sometimes, and you see a reason why I didn't have it to show guides is that there's so many freaking guides in this document. So I just hit them. So now it's showing the guides, and I'll just try to zoom in and see if it's actually located at the edge. And it seems like it's not entirely located at the edge. You see that? The smart guide seems like it's not entirely located at the edge. I don't know if you notice. It's like just a bit off from the edge. So sometimes your smart guides are not 100% smart. So also make sure that you have switched on snap to point. Bam. That way when I move my my guide, it should snap. And if you're sometimes having problems dealing with this, it might also be because of something else. And that's the problem with several artboards in one document. It might actually be trying to connect to something from the artboard that is above. So that's why I often prefer, when making objects that have some kind of symmetrical look, or units that's going to be reused again and again, then I often make a new document where there's no other artboards with different things in, because it will start using different anchor points that's located other places in the document in order to place when using the smart guides. So I'm just saying, consider that. Well, if we place this correctly, then actually by just drawing a rectangle below the object and drawing it 10 centimeters, it should be exactly at the end point of the circle as well. The curve where the circle ends. And it's actually telling me this is exactly 100 millimeters. It says width 100 millimeters. I don't know if you see that. It informs me that it's 100 millimeters. If you don't see this, perhaps it's because you have some tips switched off inside of general. You can always switch that back on. I'm not going to go through all of the different things and preferences, but most likely you'll be able to see it, especially if you have smart guides switched on, because it's a part of smart guides. Okay, so this is 100 millimeters. If you're in doubt, you can always go to transform, see, yes, it has a width of 100 millimeters. And okay, I'll just drag this guideline as well, and be sure that it connects. And and it still seems like there's some object that it's connecting to instead. So I just really need to pay attention that it is actually connecting to the object. And sometimes the reason why it's actually not connecting, other than actually objects being up here, sometimes the reason is actually also that you have a stroke on an object. Because Your smart guides will not try to connect to strokes, it will only connect to the path. The path of Illustrator. Yeah. Okay. But it seems like I've placed my guidelines correctly now. Otherwise, they are placed so correct that it's almost correct. Every time I try to place my guidelines, I actually try not to just hit the edge of an object, but I try to hit the anchor point of that edge. Because then I know it's going to be precisely at the edge. Because this is a circle, right? And the top point will be where the curve starts to go in the other direction. So I'll actually use the anchor point to somehow help me. Okay, so on top of that, I'm gonna just drag one to the center of the object, and this is almost impossible to see for me because the object is green, so I'm just gonna color the object some other color. Let's just make it white, or some grayish color. So it's gonna be easier for me to move this. And now I can also see where the center is actually. So I'll just put one guideline in the center as well, both from the top and from the side. Come on, help me, god damn it. It should be there. Okay, I'll use this anchor point as reference. But normally, if you didn't have all of these different objects next to it should be able to help you to find the center of the object. But it doesn't matter because I had the anchor point, which would indicate the center of the object. You know, the left side of the circle, the right side of the circle will be the center on the horizontal angle. Okay, now I'm just talking a lot. So we have all of these different guidelines, and they will help me actually in order to figure out how the units will be located. So first of all, the center line helps me to figure out what half of this measurement is. So I can actually just drag a copy of this rectangle down here. I can drag a copy of that by holding down Alt, just dragging that below, and simply just resizing the object to where the guideline ends. So that way I have, this should be 50. Okay, so embrace yourself. Now I'm going to transform panel and checking if it's 50. Yes, it's 50. Yes. Well, sometimes you misplace a guideline and then you know it isn't 50. Then it's 49 point something. So I'm just so happy when everything works out, especially if I'm filming it. Okay, but you actually didn't need all of these guidelines, because the next thing you can do is actually just instead to use transform. So if I made another copy of this by simply just dragging it with Alt, I could simply just go to switch my reference point to being left reference point, and then setting the width to be divided by 2, or I could just write 25. So divide is front slash. I write in width, I write front slash, and then I just write 2. That means divided by 2. Bam. And you see what happened? It became the right measurement in width, but it constrains proportions, so it also changes in height. So I'm just gonna switch off constraint proportions, and then I'm gonna write front slash 2 divided by 2, and that way it will look correct. And I don't know, perhaps I'll also want it to have a division which is even half of this. Oh, I'll just make a copy. divided by 2, like that. And so I'm gonna actually now I'll just delete the topmost rectangle up here because I don't need that, because by just copying these and putting them over here, you'll notice then I have actually all measurements that I need apart from one. So I took the entire rectangle, which was 10 millimeters in width, and just deleted that. I don't need that anymore, but I will need these measurements: 12.5, 25, and then 37.5. I will need that as well. I haven't made that yet. I will need those and 50 in order to make this curve that cuts through the object. Okay, so I just need that last one, which is actually 12.5. Just needed to make a copy and put it over here like that. And then we have actually all the measurements we'll need. And I'll just put it over here as well. So that's the measurements we need. You could make guidelines for this, but if Illustrator is working properly, it should also just automatically be able to figure out when placing the anchor points. It should automatically consider these things that are below. So it's also a good thing that it's considering things below and above and next to and so on. Okay, so next thing I'll do is I'll make sure to lock my circle. And you know, I don't want these guidelines to be interrupting me anymore. They were actually just there in the start to help me out, figuring out where's the center and so on. But right now they're just going to be complicated because Illustrator is made in this fancy fashion that you can actually also use different tools on the guidelines, which is the only program where you can actually go in and adjust the guidelines with different tools. For example, if I wanted to cut my guidelines in Illustrator, I can do that. So it just becomes a very small part of the actual object. You see, now I have a guideline that's only located in this segment. So guidelines is gonna mess with you if you don't either lock them, make them invisible, or delete them. So what I'm gonna do is, I don't know, perhaps I could just lock them. I'm totally cool with not seeing them at all, so just know that you can always make them again. In my case, I'm simply just gonna, I don't know, make them invisible. Hide guides, or clear guides if you didn't want them anymore. Hide guide, or lock them. Then I'm gonna select this object right here, the 3 circles on top of each other, and I'm gonna lock them. And in Illustrator, if you wanna lock something that you selected, you simply click Command 2, the number 2. Bam, and then it's locked. And okay, so where do you find that? How did I know it was Command 2? You could just go to Object, Lock, and you'll notice it says Selection. Lock Selection is Command 2 up here. Okay, so now it's locked, and I need to make this this wavy shape that I see down here. And the way that I'll make this is simply just by starting out with my pen tool over here. I'll start where the anchor point is located, and let's just make it. I'll draw in black. So out here where it says anchor, I have a hard time seeing that it says anchor because I have an orange circle writing with pink on top of it, and it's almost impossible for me to see that it says anchor, but it does. Okay, so I'm gonna click there, and you see now when I move my mouse across my object, it will say when I'm 12.5 millimeters into the object, because my smart guides helps to point out for me when I'm 12.5 millimeters into the object. So that's fantastic. So I'll just click to place that point, and I'll just click to place it at 25, and I'll click to place it at 37.5, and I'll click to place it at 50. I'll click to place it at 62.5, at 75, and at 87 point. Is it 75? Oh, whatever. My brain is fried right now. Okay, so now we made those points, and so I also want this to become a curve, so it's not just a straight line. So I'll put, I don't know, should we make it start going down, or should we make it start going up? Doesn't really matter. Okay, since you didn't say anything, I'll make it so it goes down. So I'll just click my second anchor point on this path, and I'll tell it on my Y axis, not Y as in why is this possible, but Y as in the first letter in yes. So I'll go all the way past millimeters, and after millimeters I'll write -10. Okay, so that goes up. So of course I should have written plus. Damn, brain not working. And now I had the entire object selected. God damn it. Of course it's plus because I wanted to go further down. Okay, so you know the Y value is not going to be the same for you because your object is placed a different location of your document compared to mine. So I'm gonna select the next part here. The third point will be located at the same area. The fourth point, I'll tell it to become -10 millimeters after the millimeter value. And then same goes for the sixth point. I'm gonna tell that to become +10. And same thing goes for the eighth point. I'm gonna tell that to become -10. And that way we have the start of our curve. I could select all of this object, and I'm going to do that. Not just I could, I'm going to do it. And then I'm actually going to lock this object. So I'm just going to click Command 2 because I'll want to make this into a curve. There are different ways to make this into a curve, but you know, in Illustrator, you're not able to adjust handles mathematically. You cannot adjust handles so that one handle is located precisely 0.8 something, blah, blah, blah. And it's actually always been a thing that I've been missing in Illustrator, that you could actually type in values of handles. I think it's very annoying that you can only do it on anchor points, but not on handles. So if anyone finds a plugin at some point for Illustrator where you can type in values for handles, I would appreciate you sending that plugin to me. Okay, so my way of making sure that the curves are exactly the same is actually to use a tool. Also, just to do something new, use the arc tool. So I'll use my arc tool right here, and I'll simply, with snap to point and smart guide switched on, I'll simply click from anchor point number 1 to 2 and simply draw an arc from here to there. Likewise, from anchor point 2 to 3, I'll just draw one there as well. It's very important that it says anchor, so you make sure that the curves are exactly the same width and height. And I'll just continue doing like this. It doesn't matter that the curves are turned in the wrong direction. We'll just fix that afterwards. Boom, 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 boom. And there we go. Okay, and now you can actually either hide or delete the line you made in the background. So I'm just gonna go to I'm just gonna hide mine in case I need it. So that line we used for the curves, I simply just made that invisible. But you could delete it if you wanted. Okay, so the next thing is all of these arcs are actually disconnected. They are not connected to each other, so they could be moved separately. So we're gonna use the object path join function by simply just going through by where first object hits anchor point 2 and anchor point 2 starts the second object. We're going to select that using the white arrow, the direct select tool, and just clicking Command J. So this is very, very fast. We're just going to connect all of these anchor points one by one, just selecting them, joining them. Oh my God, don't do that. Click undo. I need to turn them around first. Otherwise, it's going to be complicated. Okay. Whew. We just ignore that Andreas just fucked up. Luckily, we have undo. So before I connect them, of course, I need to turn the curves in the right direction. So by having the second object selected, most likely it's going to be your second object selected as well, I can just, with my black arrow, rotate this object like that, and then it will be pointing in the correct direction. You could actually also just use the rotate tool. We're just getting to learn some different tools if we're not used to using them. You could actually use the rotate tool as well to simply just rotate it. If you use the rotate tool, it's very important that you click for it to rotate from the correct anchor point. Right. Transform, yes, from fuck rotate tool. I'm not, okay, just take your normal, on the video I'm using rotate tool, but right now I can see that I don't have the patience to set the right settings for my rotate tool. So we're just gonna use the black arrow to switch these. I actually said fuck on the video. Sorry out there. I'm very much sorry. We're actually gonna have a pirate event at Roggen. So there you can curse all you want if you come to that event. Okay. Okay, so now we turn all of these around and then we connect them. So that was what I was trying to show you before. Simply connect these. So take your white arrow, select these anchor points on top of each other, and simply choose join. Do it with all the anchor points. They shouldn't be hard to locate because they're located 1 centimeter. 12.5 millimeters next to each other. And connecting them was again Command J. So now all of these should be connected, and it's very easy to find out if they are connected, but because you simply just click outside the object, then click once again on top of it with the black arrow, and then when you move it, everything should be moving. If everything is not moving, then it's because those points are not connected yet. So now it's just a matter of changing the weight of this object, the path to become another weight. I don't know if you prefer it to be very thick or very thin. I just put mine to 30. That's perhaps you would want it to be the same size actually as these circles, but so then you could simply just adjust it and perhaps see if you can also actually type millimeters in here. So I could try writing 10 millimeters in this value. Of course, I need to have selected the object. 10 millimeters, write that. And then it will be actually double the value because it's 10 millimeters on both sides of the path. So it would be actually 5 millimeters if you wanted the same value as the circles out here have. But for me, that's too thin. So I'll probably go with plus, sorry, not plus, but instead 20 millimeters. What the fuck am I doing? 10 millimeters, which is 20 millimeters. That was what I was trying to do. Okay, so, and that's 10 millimeters is 28.346 point size. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is I'll actually try to make this into not a shape that's inside of the object, but actually a hole that's inside of the object. That means I have to unlock these circles in the background, and instead of having to unlock them from the layers, I could simply go to Object, Unlock All, bam. Then everything in my entire file is unlocked. And I'll just make this into a color so we can see that it's actually not just transparency or white, but that it actually is an object. Okay, so next off, I'm gonna make this a hole in my object. So I'm gonna select my, this is not gonna work if this is a path. I'll show you what happens if I try to cut an object, punch through an object with a path. So if I select this and select the one object in the background and I choose Pathfinder and choose minus front, it will make a weird shape, a really weird shape. So of course I won't be doing that. Instead I will first of all tell my object, this stroke right here, I'll tell that stroke to expand itself. So and I told this actually, I think I told this already in exercise number 1. Remember to expand your shapes if you want to have more editing capabilities with them. So object expand, and then click OK, and then it becomes a shape instead of a stroke. And this way I can select both the circle, the center circle, and the object, the wavy object, and click minus front. If you want to keep this object before just simply using it to punch through objects, perhaps it's a good idea to make a copy of it and then hide that copy. So before I use it to punch through, I'm just gonna say copy, because it took some time to make it, so it's annoying it that I have to make it again. So I say copy and then paste in front, and simply in my layers I'll just hide that. So I'll hide that, and then I know that I have a duplicate, which is always available if I do something wrong. Okay, again, I'll select the circle, the smallest circle, and the object that I drew using my pen tool and arc tool. And use my Pathfinder or my shape builder tool in order to cut through it. So this way I have this wavy object going through, and it's gonna, yeah, it's nice. I like it. Last but not least, if we want there to be an entire hole punching through the entire object, I could use the second circle right here to punch through the third circle. So I'm just going to select those two and simply use minus front, and then we have one object in the center and another circle at the edge. And that's the way to do it. That's the way to make an object like this. And some companies really, it depends on which type of company you're working for, which client you're working for. But some companies really prefer precision, where you're using units and you're using the same measurements again and again and again. And this is one way to do it. And you didn't have actually to draw all of these. You could also just, when making that curve inside, mathematically think about where should I place each of these anchor points. So this is just, the reason why I drew these was actually to show you how smart guides could help you. If you made objects like this at the bottom, then smart guides would help you place your anchor points when drawing shapes. That's the end of this exercise. I hope you liked it. You're good people out there. Yeah.